listening to the LOZ Podcast Network.
Welcome back, everybody. The LOZ Podcast Network. I'm here with my buddy Luke Hagedorn. We are talking about all the things at the lake. We're talking about growth. We're talking about business. We're talking about people moving to the lake and new ideas. And in this segment, I want to go down a road. You've seen it on social media, obviously. When you use the term data center, it evokes a lot of emotion in this area. And not just this area. It's going on around the United States. I happen to be going down the road of AI. I've really immersed myself in what it can do. I believe it's going to make our lives better. I believe it's going to give opportunities to people in a lot of different ways. And so I am a fan of moving the community to a better tech area. And I know there's a lot of people who are really upset of the idea of having maybe a data center move in or more tech move in. And you get hit with this, I'm sure, on planning and zoning and even maybe with the Lake Area Chamber and stuff. But, I wanted to kind of go down the road and talk a little bit about what's going on and maybe give the audience a little bit of information that they don't have yet. And a lot of that is, there's a lot of information out there and a lot of, I'll call it scare tactics going on about data centers right now. On the positive side, there is about $750 billion of CapEx money that is set aside for 2026, 2027 that is dedicated to coming up with better power solutions, better compute, which is data, and better tech. And so there are communities all across the United States that are, obviously, it's the biggest pot of money there's ever been in the last 100 years sitting out there for something like this. So you see cities like Montgomery City, just up the road. You see they're building a big data center up there. They've embraced it. You see cities in St. Louis and Kansas City that are saying, no, we don't want one here. We had a little bit of an instance in Camdenton where they were talking about possibly putting in a data center in some land, and that got a lot of people up in arms. Where do you think we should look? What do you think we should, how should we look at this from the standpoint of responsible growth in a community?
Sure, it's a great question, and that's kind of what the planning and zoning was faced with a little bit over the last couple of months. As I told you, as mentioned on the planning and zoning committee, things are brought to us from time to time. Most of what we do, at least in my experience, I'm one of the newer folks on that particular commission, but since I've been on the board, what I've found is mostly developers wanting to change from commercial to residential commercial, industrial, little various changes in the map. And as I mentioned before, I told both mayors who appointed and reappointed me to this position that it's not exactly my wheelhouse, but I love to get in it. I love to help. And one of the reasons it's not necessarily my wheelhouse is that the minutia of moving this to that, moving that. But it's also because I feel like it's my land. I should be able to do whatever I want to on it. And I know that ship has sailed because there is planning and zoning. But part of the reason I was reluctant to join the committee is I'm tempted to say anytime they come to me about anything and it says, I want to do this with my land. Fine, it's your land. Do with it what you want. Mm-hmm. As long as you're not, whatever. So that's my philosophy, my heart. So that's generally where I come from. So that's why planning and zoning wasn't too interesting to me. Every once in a while, though, they bring you an ordinance. And with an ordinance is a chance that I get to kind of nerd out and really get in there. I come from a background in political science of working in government a little bit in Jeff City. And so digging in and bill tracking and all that stuff in my college days. So the great part about P&Z as opposed to like the Board of Aldermen. Board of Aldermen have to deal with every issue that comes by and any given meeting, they may have dozens of things to discuss. With P&Z, you get a chance. It's usually 2 or 3 at the most items you're really looking at. So as a commissioner on P&Z, you can really dig into that, really dive into that. So I took a look at they were bringing a data center ordinance to the Board of Aldermen. But first, because that has to do with land use, that has to go through our board, right? Mm-hmm. Now,
was this on a specific project, or this is just on anything that comes? They wanted to set some rules ahead of time.
Preemptive.
Okay.
And so that was one of my first questions was, what is the impetus behind this? What is driving the need for us to come up with this law right now and do it? And I want to know if we got somebody making plans, is this just some sort of statement we want to make? Hey, we're against data centers. We want to come out there and say something. That was my first question. I'm going to get to the bottom. Why are we doing this? And then the next question becomes, how are we going to do the smart labor bubble? Things like that. So I dug into the first ordinance they brought to us. I started reading through it. I started asking questions within myself, writing down questions. And I started thinking, one of the things I started thinking is like, well, this really reminds me of the cell phone tower battles of the 90s. That's when I first really started paying attention to politics and what was going on. And I like to look at history because I think we can learn from it instead of repeating it. And I look back on when the cell phone towers came in, and there was a lot of that pushback, right?
Yeah. It's going to fry our brain.
There was a lot of, there was concerns, some of them legitimate, maybe some of them not. And what you saw was communities across our country react in different ways. And we kind of got into how that's going with data center. And you start to see all these parallels. There was communities that just didn't do anything or embraced it. And the cell phone towers came. There were communities that fought it and put up these regulations. And the cell phone tower companies had better lawyers and they fought it, or they complied with whatever rules that they put on, or they kept the cell phone towers out and they came for them later. And the federal government came in 1996, put their new rules in and said, you guys can't be, and they tried to make it, instead of a patchwork of different municipality rules, they tried to bring it all together. And I can go into a lot more detail on this, how the parallels between the cell phone battle or the cell tower battle and data center battle. But you fast forward to today, and you can find all of our community cell phone towers that have either broken down fences or various different
ways they hit them, or they just do camouflage
and different agriculture around them to keep whatever. And it's all kind of gone away because people don't care. Most people might want a cell phone tower in their backyard if that's going to give them better service.
Right.
But you remember the fear and the fervor about it back in the 90s.
Yeah.
When I was in my early days. And what happened was the little guys got squeezed out because only the big companies who could afford the best lawyers, afford the best lobbyists could play the game and put their towers up. And slowly, as the law changed, the ones who survived. And in the long run, all those lawyers and lobbyists we paid for in roaming fees.
Yeah.
Right.
Yep.
So that's what's kind of going on here. They're trying to preemptively protect us. And I want to protect the lake. I want to protect this beautiful, all those things are great, but I want to do it smart.
Yeah.
And I want to do it in a way that actually works and that can stand up to any kind of challenge from the outsiders legally, that actually works. It actually does something. It's not just a bunch of hoops that you're trying to sell. Because a lot of people might say, hey, Ken, why can't we just ban data centers outright?
Mm-hmm.
Why can't we just write a law that says, you know what? No data centers in our town. A lot of people have asked me that. That question got asked at the meeting last night. Turns out there's a pesky little thing called the Constitution.
That thing, it comes up, doesn't it? It's just
the takings clause, amongst many other parts of the Constitution. You can't tell somebody, hey, you're not allowed to run X business on this. You just can't do it. That you're not allowed to do that. Now you can go about it creatively by setting up. So I was wondering if this particular data center law was something that was set up as a way to just keep them out,
jump through more hoops.
Would it actually work? Would it actually protect our community?
Right.
What is this bill or this ordinance actually trying to do? And so I really looked into it, and I felt like I'm not a lawyer. But I got robot lawyers on here, right?
Yeah, right.
So I started asking questions, researching some stuff, and to me, I just felt like we were legally maybe at risk. And I'm not a lawyer, but the problem was there wasn't a lawyer there for me to ask these questions to and say, what about this? What about this? And it's because, so we go through this meeting, I'm asking several of these questions about it. And I'll admit, I can be long-winded. Imagine that, right? And I can ask these questions, but I feel like we have a responsibility when we're put on these committees to do the work.
Yeah.
And really look into it. So I showed up at the meeting and I had notes. I had this subsection, this conflicts with subsection, this, and blah, 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 all these different things. And I showed up at the meeting to ask my questions, and not to be, whatever, but I'm going to ask some questions.
Yeah, not adversarial, you just to figure it out.
Protect our city, protect the citizens, all those things. And I got through I was trying to work my way through my questions, and then it was a couple things happened simultaneously. I realized I was being kind of shushed a little bit. It was time to move on.
Okay.
They were moving on to the next questioner, blah, blah. My time was up,
Uh-huh.
even though I wasn't done. But I also realized nobody in the room who was voting on this ordinance even had a copy of the paper in front of them to read and reference. And so when I'm saying subscription this, subscription that, nobody has anything. We got an email to us ahead of time. They didn't print anything out of that meeting. So we're just voting on this thing. And so when it came down for the vote, I got one last little bit in there, and I could tell you about that some later. But I said one more last thing, and then they called for the vote, and I voted against it. And it wasn't because I wasn't trying to protect our community. It wasn't because I felt like the process
was preset.
Well, it just hadn't, whatever. I don't know what was going on, but didn't feel right to me.
Yeah. There's a lot of political pressure on people running for office to talk against data centers. I mean, let's face it, that's the popular thing. And I think maybe we're losing sight a little bit of some of the benefits that come from having a 7 or 8 or 10 year construction project that's going to pay a lot of people locally. And actually, this is great because, this is going to be an ongoing conversation we're going to have. I'd love to have you back on and delve a little bit more into it. Great info, though, on the process and how, people are trying to get out in front of it. They're trying to understand what's going on. They're trying to put up some safety measures, sure, which are all great. But you don't want to close off the opportunity either. So how do you do it both responsibly for the community and protect them, and also leave it to like you said, things are changing so fast. We don't want to necessarily just say no to everything, but we want to understand a little bit better. Thanks for coming on with me today. I really had a great time talking to you, and I hope we can get you back on to talk about some more stuff that has to do with all the things and the growth that are going on at Lake of the Ozarks. I know you're a true patron of the city, and a lot of things you're doing are trying to help move everybody forward, and we just appreciate you.
Hey, appreciate what you're building here. The fact that you're doing it in Osage Beach, it's all the better, and I love to help you out along the way any way I can.
Thank you, everybody. That is Luke Hagedorn, and we are loving the fact that we can talk about things that happen here locally. We're all about local in the LOZ app, so make sure you get the app on your phone. You go through there and patronize all the businesses that are here trying to make a living, not only in the summers, but in all throughout the whole year. We appreciate everything you do. And once again, we will see you next week on Saturday from 10 to 11 on KRMS, and anytime you want to watch in the LOZ app. Until then, we'll see you next time.